Hey everybody, James Moffitt coming to you live from Goose Creek, South Carolina. We're just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. And as you already know, we fun lovingly nicknamed Goose Creek Duck Ditch, USA. So, anyway, I probably haven't told you this, or maybe I did, but my wife lost her cell phone, right? And we searched for it for, I don't know, 9 days. Couldn't find it. So, my wife, Katie, paid her $49 deductible to have T Mobile send her a new one. So she should be getting it today. So I'm standing in the living room talking to her just a few minutes ago. Now we're talking about, the new case that I ordered for the new phone and the AirTag for it and a little AirTag case that I can put the AirTag in and screw it together, and then it has adhesive that fits on the back of the case, and then I can sign it up on my iPhone, Find My or whatever the application is. Anyway, so we're talking about all of that. And she's excited about her phone getting here today so she can set it up and all of that and have her phone back. Because if you don't have a cell phone, a smartphone, you're kind of crippled, because that's how you communicate with all your vendors, your banking establishment, your doctor's office, insurance companies, everything. If you don't have a smartphone and the apps for all of these different organizations and vendors, you're pretty much screwed. I don't know how my parents back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s managed to live life without a smartphone. Everything was done manually. I remember my dad, uh, he paid all the bills monthly, and I remember him sitting down with the checkbook and writing out all the checks, putting them in an envelope, licking and sticking it, putting a stamp on it, putting it in the mailbox. I don't know how he budgeted. I don't know if he just kept it in his head. Maybe he had a piece of paper with everything written down. I wasn't really involved in that process, so I don't know. But today, fast forward to 2026, the 21st century, you have to have a smartphone. So I'm talking to Katie about all of this, and I look down between the I looked out between the recliner and the table that's between our recliners, and what do I see? Her cell phone. Her cell phone's laying on the floor by the right rear corner of her recliner. And I told her, I said, "Look, I see her cell phone." She thought I was kidding. She thought it was a joke. It's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I see your damn cell phone behind your recliner." And she reached down and grabbed a hold of it. I told her, I said, "We're going to use a new one. The new one's coming in. They probably turn the SIM card off on the old phone, and when she turns on the new phone, the SIM will be activated, and off to the races she'll go. And we'll stick the old one in a drawer. That way, if she loses the new one, maybe we can use the old one again." I don't know. It is too strange. She lost her cell phone. I lost my blood sugar receiver, and now we're back to normal. We found both of them. Hey, so yesterday, Kitty and I went to Texas Roadhouse to have lunch, and they had a lunch special for $11.99 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something like that. I don't know if that's a everyday thing. I think it is, which is nice to know, because if you both get an entree and a drink or whatever, it can be kind of expensive. We usually just share something. We share like they have their sampler, their appetizer sampler for, like, I don't know, $13. We usually order that and share that, and it makes our bill right around $20 or a little less, depending on what kind of drink we get. So we went to Texas Roadhouse, had dinner, had lunch, and then we went to Walmart in North Charleston, and I went in and got some garbage bags and some shaving cream that I needed, and then we went and tracked down a homeless person that I became familiar with when I worked security there for 6 months last year, from April until October. I will not tell you the lady's name. I'll just say, we'll just call her Mary. So we found Mary. She was sitting in the parking lot out away from the store with her grocery basket full of belongings. And she was all bundled up with her coat, and she had her hood up, and her little face was kind of buried in the, the hoodie. She's 66 years old. Mary is 66 years old, and she weighs about 98 pounds soaking wet. She's a little bitty thing, probably about 5 foot tall. I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad that she's alive and she didn't freeze to death in our recent cold snap we had. She sleeps on a bench by a car wash somewhere where there's a couple of walls that she can at least get the wind blocked from those two directions. But anyhow, one of the things I'm very passionate about is homeless people. And I'm passionate about that because at one point in my life, I was homeless. I was, I guess, in my 20s. I don't know, 24, 25 maybe. And I had worked a security job at West. I don't remember what the name of the mall is anymore. It was in Houston, Texas, third largest city in the United States. Anyway, I was working a security job, and for whatever reason, I lost my apartment, and then I wound up sleeping in the security office, and they found out about that, and they fired me, and I was dating this young lady named Mary, another Mary. Anyway, her nickname was Miss Piggy. I was head over heels in love with Miss Piggy, and I'd given her an engagement ring and that I'd saved up for a long time. And she introduced me to her parents, and her parents recognized the fact that I was a deadbeat, wasn't going very anywhere fast, and they basically said, "Okay, you can either continue dating him or you can go to college. Those are your two choices. You continue seeing him, then we're going to take your college money away from you." And while I thought that was kind of cruel and unfair at the time, I recognize the wisdom in that now that I'm 64 and raised four children. But anyway, I became homeless. I wound up with 3 or 4 plastic trash bags of stuff, my clothes, which was all I had left. And I was living under a bridge, one of the major overpasses in Houston, Texas. And I was there for 3 or 4 days. And it wasn't a lot of fun, I have to say. I don't remember a lot about it, but I do remember that it wasn't any fun. Didn't have a cell phone. Cell phones weren't a thing back then. I want to say this was in the early 1980s. I went to Houston, Texas in after May of 1980 when I graduated high school. So this was probably 81, sometime in 1981. And, I was under the bridge, and a guy in a coffee van, a little step van, stopped. And this fellow, he was the owner of the business. He was making coffee deliveries. He was a coffee distributor, I guess you could say. And he picked me up and he asked me if I wanted to work for him for a couple of days and earn some money. And I said, sure. What did I have to lose, right? So I did. And I rode around with the guy and told him my story. He was very nice to me, and come to find out he was a Christian. And he let me stay in his warehouse. He had a little cot in the bathroom in his warehouse, and he gave me some tasks to do, sweep the warehouse, mow the grass, blah, blah, blah. And I earned some money. And that was pretty cool. Then he said, hey, I got this place called the Star of Hope Mission I want to take you to. I know the director there, and I know you're not an alcoholic or a drug addict or anything like that, but they can kind of help you get your life back in order, and you can take care of business, get off the streets. And I was like, okay, fine, that'll work. So this gentleman put me in his van with my trash bags of belongings, and I had a pocket full of money, probably about $100. I don't know, maybe less than that. And then he took me down to the Star of Hope Mission, downtown Houston, Texas, and he dropped me off. And I thanked him for his generosity and for his hospitality and all of that. And I turned around and looked as he drove off, and there were some homeless people that were in front of the Star of Hope Mission on cardboard boxes, and they were cussing and stinking, and they had little bottles of MD 2020, and they were drinking. And the first thing I uttered in my head to God was, I am better than this. This is not a place for me. I was raised in a middle class white community, and I didn't know what it was to be homeless up until that point. Well, there was a motel across the street from the Star of Hope Mission, and I went over there, and I wasted that money I'd earned on, I don't know, 3 days, 4 nights, something like that. And of course, food. I had to go out and get food. And I ran out of money. No job. Guess where I wound up? Out in front of the Star of Hope Mission with the rest of those guys. And I finally swallowed my pride and went in and asked for the director. I forget what his name was. He looked like Colonel Sanders, KFC's Colonel Sanders, white hair, beard. And I went in, and they called me, well, my parents called me Jimmy Moffitt. That's what my relatives call me, is Jimmy. But in my adult life, I was known as James. Am known as James. And so they said, "Hey, we've been expecting you like 3 days ago. What happened?" I told them. I said, and so they made me a trustee, and I was able to eat with the staff, the director and all the managers and the pastoral staff that was on duty there. And I was able to live there as a trustee, and I helped to serve food to the men and do clothes stuff and what have you. But anyway, at Star of Hope Mission, you only get to eat. You can eat 3 meals a day, but you got to go to a church service before you eat. That was the requirement for eating. And so the church service was, they had churches that would volunteered that would come in, They had 5 or 6 churches Monday through Sunday. They'd come in at a specific time, I guess, and they would play music, and they'd have a Bible study, or a preacher would preach, the gospel of Christ, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and tell you about God's love and His grace and all of that. Well, I became a Christian when I was 17. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, asked Him to forgive me of my sins, and did all of the things that I was required to do in order for me to go to heaven. So I had a little card, a little go to heaven card, right? If I were to die, I would just present this go to heaven card to the pearly gates to St. Peter and go. And he would go, "Okay, James, you're good to go. Come on in." Well, apparently there's more to it than that. I didn't know that. I was there for 45 days, and I'm telling you this story to give you some background context to my talking to you about homelessness, right? So I kept hearing the gospel message, and I was like, I'm very familiar with that, and I've already done what I need to do to get into heaven. And I kept asking God, "Why me, Lord? What have I done? Why am I here? I'm not a drug addict. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a rapist. I don't do drugs. I don't hurt people. I don't do bad things. I'm a good person in my mind. I'm a good person." And well, after so many services and Christian counseling and talking to people, I finally figured out that it wasn't what I had done, it's what I hadn't done. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean it was what you had not done? Because I thought I had fulfilled all the prerequisites for being saved, and going to heaven. And a still small voice told me that it's not what you've done, it's what you haven't done. And I was like, "What? Okay, what have I not done?" And God told me that it's what I had, that yes, I had fulfilled the requirements for entrance to the kingdom of heaven. However, my name was written in the Lamb's book of life. And if you read the New Testament, you'll know what that is. It says, your name's written in the Lamb's book of life. You've been sealed and forgiven of your sin as far as east is from the west. But now I have a purpose for your life. I have a purpose for who you are and what you're supposed to do with the rest of your life. And that is mainly to serve Him, to serve God. He saved me so I could serve Him, and so I could tell other people about His saving grace. And like I said, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the 4 Gospels of Christ that in the New Testament that tell you specifically about God's love for you. You don't have to be a good person. Good people don't get to heaven. Bad people don't get to heaven. It's not about whether you're good or bad. It's not about whether you have sin. We all sin. All of us have sin in our life. And the only way to be absolved of that sin is through the blood of Jesus, who hung on the cross at Calvary. Now, I know you're probably sitting there thinking, "Oh, he's going to get all preachy on us." No, I'm not going to preach at you, but I am going to tell you about how God's love and the blood was applied at Calvary so that I might have eternal life. And if you're listening to this, you've probably been exposed to who Jesus is. You literally would have to live under a rock, especially today with the internet and with the ability to hear the gospel message. You've probably heard of Billy Graham. You've probably heard of all kinds of evangelists. Yeah, some of the evangelists are bad. Some of them have made mistakes and tarnished the gospel of Christ because they had a weakness or an addiction or something. But no matter how fallible man is, no matter how much sin is in our life, God is still God. Jesus still died on the cross, and there's only one way to heaven. And it's not through being good. And it's not through being a member of a cult or a denomination or going into a church 365 days a year. A lot of people think, well, I'm a churchgoer. Do you believe in Jesus? Sure, I believe in Jesus. I believe He's God. Have you asked Him to come into your life and to forgive you of your sin and to come in and take up residency through the power of the Holy Spirit in your heart? Well, no. Or they might look at you like you got 3 heads and go, what? But yeah, church attendance and church membership does not guarantee that you're going to go to heaven. And then that might be an epiphany for you. And if it is, all I will say is just stay tuned to this channel and to my videos, because I will share the gospel message with you, and I will tell you about how much God loves you, and I'll share the word of God with you, and I'll pray for you both online and offline. And once you get the message and once you have the knowledge that you need, at that point, you'll have to take ownership of it, and you'll have to decide, are you going to accept Jesus or are you going to reject Him? And lots of folks have done both. So anyway, homelessness and homeless people are near and dear to my heart. If you're a new listener to my videos, I would ask you to like and subscribe on my channel, youtube.com/James Moffitt. You can support me in these videos by going to paypal.com. No, I'm sorry. PayPal.com/James Moffitt, Moffitt. That's paypal.me/James Moffitt. And you can just make a donation of any kind, of any amount. Everything counts. Everything helps, right? So the internet, computer equipment, subscriptions, and all of that, they add up. None of this stuff is free. So I would encourage you, even if it's just $4 or $3, the cost of a cup of coffee, you can buy me some coffee or whatever you decide to do, even if you decide not to do it. But anyway, paypal.me/James Moffitt. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll dearly appreciate it. If you leave me a comment, I will respond to you. I've got 92 subscribers, and I've had some people actually engage with me in messages, and I really like that. If you look down in the message posts, you'll see that I created a text poll asking people how they like to consume content on YouTube. And if you would find that and participate in that poll, that would be cool too. So anyway, because of my experience at the Star of Hope mission, I found a job as a security officer for Mustang Security in Houston, Texas, because I had experience, right? And that experience helped me to find a job. And I didn't have a car. And I'll tell you that I got out of the Star of Hope mission. I managed to roommate with a young man named Johnny Barton. I don't even know if he's still around. He was a preacher, just gotten out of seminary up in Virginia or Tennessee. I forget what state. And he got out of seminary and came down to the Star of Hope mission and was on staff. And he and I became friends. And he said, "Hey, if you want, you can stay with me and sleep on the couch or whatever, and we'll roommate and blah blah blah." Wound up becoming best buddies, and I did that. And I didn't have a car, but I knew that Mustang Security was hiring, so I rode the bus every day for about 2 weeks. Filled out an application every time I went there. Finally, one of the hiring managers pulled me back into his office and said, "James," he said, I know you, and I've seen your application several times, but we haven't offered you a job because you don't have a car, and you have to have a car to work for us." And I said, "Look," told him my stories. "I don't have a car. I guarantee you I'll never be late for work. I'll ride the bus. I'll get there on time every time." So he gave me a chance. He said, "Okay, I'm going to hire you, but the first time you're late to work because of the bus line, I'll let you go." I said, "Yes, sir. Thank you." And I was never late. And anyway, things got better for me. I got some paychecks. I was able to move out of Johnny Barton's efficiency apartment, found my own room to rent, my own apartment to rent, whatever. Things got progressively better for me. Employment is one of the best things you can do to keep from being homeless. So anyway, I spent 10 years in street ministry at a Christian coffee house, downtown Houston, excuse me. The Christian coffee house was in downtown Houston. So I was there for 10 years, and I worked as a volunteer, and they had I think it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings. They had church services for the homeless people, and they would come up there and we'd feed them sandwiches and give them coffee, and the church volunteers would come in and sing Christian music and do Bible studies and stuff. And I did that for 10 years. And so anyway, as I told you, I have deep ties to people that are homeless and homelessness and trying to help people that are homeless. To this day, I do that. And when I was working security over at Walmart last year, I teamed up with a company called Palmetto Brigadiers, and I know the owner of that, and several people at my church, at Coastal Community Church, purchase backpacks, and we put non-perishable food and toilet articles and a New Testament and several things, hand wipes and things that homeless people desperately need. And one of the things your money, if you decide to support my channel, one of the things I'll do with that money is if I get enough of it, I will try to find a way to bulk order some backpacks. And hey, if you don't have money, but you have connections to where you can help me get a good deal on bulk order of backpacks and perishable food items, non-perishable food items, and New Testaments and all that sort of thing, write me an email at james.moffitt@pm.me. James.moffitt, Moffitt @pm.me. And any information or inroads that you would have, connections that you would have that would help me get a good deal on that stuff so I can help the homeless here in Charleston, I would deeply appreciate it. Now, I did some research online about homelessness, and I want to read some of this to you. Now, I know I'm at 25 minutes for this video, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. Maybe I'll revisit it on tomorrow's video. But it says, "Understanding Homelessness, a Big Picture View Homelessness isn't one single problem. It's a complex social, economic, and public health crisis that touches every part of the United States. The data paints a sobering picture, but it also helps us understand where the solutions can take root. How many people experience homelessness? In 2022, 582,462 people were homeless on a single night in the U.S. 582,462 people in the U.S. That's a staggering amount. Now that was just 5 states. That doesn't count all of the homeless people in all 50, 51, 52 states. How many states are in America, James? I guess I need to research that too, huh? Anyway, homelessness has been rising since 2017, up about 6% overall. The majority, about 72%, are individual adults, but families, youth, and older adults are significant and growing groups, i.e., Mary that lives in the Walmart parking lot. Just 5 states, California, New York, Florida, Washington, and Texas, account for 55% of the total homeless population. Who is most affected? Homelessness affects people of all ages and backgrounds, but it disproportionately impacts certain groups. People of color are overrepresented due to longstanding systemic inequalities, including the legacy of redlining, mass incarceration, and discrimination in housing and employment. People with disabilities and those experiencing chronic homelessness make up a significant portion of the unsheltered population. Veterans, this kills me, about 6%, and unaccompanied youth, about 5%, are notable subgroups. We have people that have served in the United States Armed Forces in their past and are homeless. Why do people become homeless? The causes are rarely simple. Research highlights several major drivers: unaffordable housing and rising rents, job loss or reduced income, eviction, family conflict or relationship breakdown, domestic violence, medical debt or untreated health issues, insufficient savings to absorb a crisis, underfunded social safety nets, and lack of accessible mental health care. A key myth is that homelessness is primarily caused by addiction or mental illness. While these can be contributing factors, housing costs and low wages are the strongest predictors of homelessness today. They say that, well, the difference between a homeless person and one that is not homeless is a paycheck. And they say that many people are only about 2 or 3 paychecks away from homelessness. In other words, you lose your job, you're laid off, you're fired, whatever. You don't have a whole lot in savings. You don't have a big 401k to draw out of or an IRA, and you run out of money. You can't pay your bills, and guess what? You're out on the streets. Can't pay rent. You're out on the streets. Can't pay your mortgage. Mortgage companies will work with you up to a certain point, but after that, you're out on your ear, right? So losing your income is a huge predictor for becoming homeless. Housing costs and low wages are the strongest predictors of homelessness today. Unsheltered versus sheltered homelessness. About 1/3 of people experiencing homelessness live unsheltered in cars, tents, abandoned buildings, or outdoors. Unsheltered homelessness has been increasing, especially in high-cost cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, and Seattle. Well, Mary was not by herself. Mary also had several people that were sheltered homeless people because they had vehicles they could sleep in. I know of 2 people that one guy had a van and another lady had a station wagon, and they had all their stuff in there, and they parked in the Walmart parking lot, hung out. That was their home, and that's not uncommon. And unless you're really exposed to it or looking for it, you might overlook it. I know lots and lots of people come to Walmart, buy their stuff, and leave, and they've just got blinders on. They don't notice homeless people. They're kind of ignored, kind of like people that are incarcerated, people in our jails and prisons. They're the outcasts of society, and people are just uncomfortable by being made aware of that. You might be listening to this video thinking, I don't want to know about this because now I'm going to be challenged to help in some way, and I can't afford to do that. And well, the fact of the matter is if you do anything's better than nothing, right? Health and emotional impact. Homelessness is a public health crisis. Physical impacts: higher rates of infectious disease, difficulty managing chronic conditions, exposure to extreme weather, freezing to death, increased risk of injury or violence. Common issues: dehydration, malnutrition, dental problems. If you're homeless, you don't have a job, guess what? You don't have income, you don't have health insurance, and unless you go to a organization like there's one called FETTER, FETTER here in Charleston area. I forget the full name, but there's like 5 or 6 clinics that are around that homeless people can go to and get health care. And of course, if you don't have a car and they're not on the clinic's not on a bus line, how are you going to get there unless you have somebody that'll take you? Mental and emotional impacts, chronic stress and hypervigilance, anxiety, depression, trauma responses, social isolation and stigma, disrupted or unsafe sleep, or how about lack of sleep? People experiencing homelessness often die decades earlier than the average American due to these conditions. Barriers people face while homeless: lack of transportation, no secure place to store belongings or documents, limited access to hygiene facilities, difficulty accessing medical care, challenges keeping phones charged, making communication, job searches, and services harder. I always tell homeless people to call 211. That's United Way. All across America, United Way is there, and a lot of major employers make donations, annual donations to United Way, because they help in turn fund all these different nonprofit organizations, food banks, clothing places. There's all sorts of nonprofit organizations in your city, town, state, wherever you live. And so if anybody is running into problems or struggles, tell them to call 211 and talk to somebody at United Way. They have counselors there, people that are on the phone banks that can listen to their story and direct them to an appropriate help organization. Bigger picture, homelessness is not simply the result of individual choices. It's the outcome of policy failures, housing shortages, economic inequality, social inequality, underfunded support systems. And yet, the data also shows that targeted investments like rental assistance, supportive housing, and emergency relief can slow or even reverse increases in homelessness. I keep telling my friend Mary that lives in the parking lot at Walmart, she supposedly gets X amount of dollars from Social Security benefits. And while it's not a huge amount of money, she could probably rent a room or get a hold of her social worker and find out about getting an apartment or living in a group home or something. There's HUD and there's Section 8 federal subsidies that reduce the cost of your living expenses, rental payments and stuff. Of course, it's income based, so you go in and you prove to them what you do or don't have financially, and then they have a sliding scale. And an apartment that normally goes for $1,000 a month may only cost you $250 a month. So even with that, you still have to turn on your utilities, your lights, your gas, your water, whatever. In an apartment complex, usually your water is provided for. Electricity, you have to pay a deposit. Maybe even the electric company may work with you. I don't know if they have programs for disadvantaged people or not. So I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna put a pin in it. Obviously, there's a huge problem, right? Lots of homeless people, and if you look around, the first place you're gonna find them is large box stores, Walmart, Target, Target. You're probably not going to see them around too much around Sam's Wholesale or Costco or anything like that, unless their actual physical property backs up to a fence and there's woods and what have you. There's a lot of tent cities that pop up behind Walmart and Target. I know in North Charleston that's the case. And close to downtown, the downtown locations are probably very heavily populated with homeless people or sheltered homeless people parking cars and stuff. But under the bridges, you'll see little tent cities pop up. If you look, you just got to open your eyes. And if you're a Christ follower, a person of faith that goes to church on a regular or irregular basis, if you talk to pastoral care, you talk to church members or whatever, you just ask them, is there a problem with homelessness? They'll probably tell you, yeah. A lot of times, homeless people will go to churches and ask for clothing and food and assistance of some sort. So churches are certainly a resource for somebody that's, especially if you're sheltered in space or sheltered, you're homeless, but you're sheltered in that you have a vehicle that you can drive around in and go to different parking spots and spend the night. Having any kind of shelter is better than no shelter. I can tell you that from experience. So anyway, I don't mean to bum you out, and I'm certainly not trying to be negative, but in 2026, together, you and I, that's right, you and I can make a small difference. And all we have to do is just volunteer at a food bank, volunteer at a homeless shelter, volunteer your time, money, and resources. Time, excuse me, I got to get that right. Time, talent, and resources. Time, talent, resources. We all have a finite amount of resources. We all have time. As long as we're alive and breathing and relatively healthy, then we have time that we can donate. You can volunteer. You can provide food and clothing to homeless people. My wife and I teamed up with a couple of 2 or 3 other people, women, and in North Charleston, I would go to KFC, or it wasn't KFC, it was another chicken joint, fried chicken place. I'd give them $50. Say, hey, I need as much chicken and sides that I can buy for $50. And they'd load me up with chicken and sides and whatever, give them to me, and they'd give me plates and plasticware. And we had 2 folding tables, little conference tables that I bought at Sam's Wholesale or Walmart. They have them for sale, and they fold out. And we'd fold out 2 or 3 of those conference tables, plastic conference tables, and we'd line up the food and get the paper plates and the napkins and plasticware, and we'd get the people to line up. We'd feed 40 or 50 people. They'd come. Now this was in North Charleston off of Rivers Avenue, and it was in a very poor neighborhood, poor area of town where people were obviously not doing well, but they had low income housing. They had, these were low income people, and there was a lot of homeless people in that area. And so we didn't have any problems finding enough people to eat the food. We probably could have fed 1,000 people if we'd had enough money to buy the chicken. I only, I was only able to provide $50 worth of food, but that's better than nothing, right? We fed 20, 30, 40 people on any given occasion. And so that was me, my wife, and 3 other people, 5 people using their time, talent, and resources to help somebody. And if all of us do something, just a little something to help, then homeless people can get some assistance. They can get some relief. We may not be able to provide a place for those people to live, but we could provide a meal, a hot meal, and hope. And you talk to them. They sit down, they eat. You go talk to them, find out what their name is, find out what their situation is. Let's just listen to them. Listen to them talk. Individually, we may not have the resources or the ability to solve their housing needs or solve their health needs, but we can be a vessel of hope. We can speak hope into their lives, positivity, and we pray for them. It doesn't cost anything to pray for somebody. It doesn't cost anything to stay in touch with people. Tell them to call 211. Tell them where their local churches are. Provide them with an avenue to get to the resources that they need to get help. And there's public transportation. Charleston has CARTA, and CARTA, you almost have to live very close to downtown to take advantage of CARTA. CARTA doesn't go out to Goose Creek. It doesn't go out to Somerville. It doesn't go out to some of these outlying neighborhoods or towns. But if you live in North Charleston and you live in Charleston, there's a bus line that you can get on. You can call CARTA on the phone, and they will tell you. They have pamphlets that'll tell you if you live at point A, these are the buses that you need to catch to go to B, C, and E, or B, C, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, I'm not going to say all that, but you get the point. If you live close to public transportation, like if you're in San Francisco or Dallas, Texas, or Houston, or any of these larger metropolitan areas, they have public transportation and you can get around. It might take you longer to do it. I remember when I was in Houston, it took me an hour to get to work and an hour to get home. And sometimes you had to change, you had to switch out, but you had to get out of the bus and go to the second one. You had to change bus routes 2 or 3 times to get where you were going, but it was possible. It wasn't impossible. It was possible, right? So what I'm saying is that there's hope. If people are willing to do the work and make small changes in their lives with our help, then maybe we can help solve part of the homelessness that's around us. And I would encourage you to think about it. And I would encourage you to go to your local church, go to any nonprofit organizations that are equipped and geared up for helping the homeless. There's a place for you. I'm sure all these organizations are hurting for volunteers that are willing to volunteer their time, talent, and resources. That's all those 3 things: time, talent, resources, and a desire in your heart to be part of the solution. All right. Okay, so let me give you a dad joke before I go. So why are stadiums so hot after a football game? We're talking like NFL. NFL, they have 50,000 people in these stadiums. The game goes on for 4 quarters, and it ends, and everybody leaves. Why are the stadiums still hot? Drum roll. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. TikTok. The reason stadiums were so hot is because their fans left. Oh, boo, hiss. That's so silly. I roll. Yeah, their fans left. That's why the stadiums were still hot. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you like, subscribe, leave a comment, send me a small donation, paypal.me/James Moffitt, and I'll use what you give me to help the homeless. I promise. All right. Talk to you later. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.